Before we begin, please remember that the information in this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional financial, legal, or aviation advice. Always consult with qualified professionals before making any significant financial decisions related to private aviation. I'll never forget the first time I chartered a private jet. The feeling was electric. I closed a big deal, and this was the reward: a weekend trip to Vegas with a few friends. I spent days online comparing quotes, looking at pictures of gleaming white planes with plush leather interiors. I finally found a deal that seemed too good to be true: a beautiful Challenger 300, the perfect size, for about 20% less than every other quote. I felt like a genius. I paid the invoice, booked the hotels, and told my friends to pack their bags. The dream was happening. And then we got to the airport. We were escorted out to the tarmac, and my stomach just dropped. The plane sitting there wasn't a Challenger 300. It was a Learjet 45. Now, a Lear 45 is a fine plane, but it's smaller, it's older, and it was not what I paid for. The interior smelled faintly of stale cigars, and one of the leather seats had a noticeable tear patched with what looked like electrical tape. The pilot, a man who looked like he just lost a bar fight, grunted a hello and started throwing our bags into the luggage compartment. When I confronted the broker on the phone, he gave me a line of pure nonsense about operational upgrades and last-minute fleet repositioning. It was a classic bait and switch. But what could I do? My friends were there, the weekend was planned. We were stuck. The flight was cramped and turbulent. The premium snacks I paid $400 for consisted of a sad bag of pretzels and some warm bottled water. The whole experience, the one that was supposed to be the pinnacle of success, felt cheap. Felt like a failure. To add insult to injury, a week later I got a second bill for $2,000 for de-icing fees that were never mentioned in the contract. That disaster of a trip cost me over $20,000, but it taught me a lesson worth $1 million. The private aviation industry, for all its glamour, can be the Wild West. It is filled with sharks and middlemen who prey on newcomers, people who are blinded by the dream and don't know the right questions to ask. They use confusing jargon, hidden fees, and deceptive photos to separate you from your money. And that is exactly why I'm making this video. After a decade in and around this world, chartering hundreds of flights, speaking with pilots, mechanics, dispatchers, and honest brokers, I've seen every trick and every trap. And I'm going to give you the playbook. We are going to pull back the curtain on the 5 things you absolutely must know before you even think about booking a private jet in 2026. Getting this right isn't just about avoiding a bad experience or saving a few $1,000s. It's about your safety, your time, and ensuring that the massive investment you're making actually delivers the value you expect. Over the course of this presentation, we're going to dismantle the entire process. I'll show you why the person you're talking to is probably not the person flying the plane, and why that matters more than anything. We will expose the myth of the empty leg deal and how it's used as bait. I'm going to give you the single most important question to ask about a jet's safety record. A question that 99% of first-time flyers are too intimidated to ask. We'll break down the hidden fees that can inflate your bill by 50%. And finally, we will look at the seismic shifts in technology and the market happening right now that are changing the game for 2026. So let's start with the absolute foundation. The single biggest mistake people make, the one that my Vegas nightmare was built on. It's not understanding who you are actually dealing with. This is point number 1. You must know the difference between an operator and a broker. On the surface, they seem the same. You search online, you find a website with pictures of jets, you get a quote. But behind the scenes, you are dealing with one of 2 very different types of businesses, and choosing the wrong one can lead to disaster. First, you have the operator. Think of the operator as the airline. They are the company that physically owns or manages the aircraft. They employ the pilots, they handle the maintenance, they hold what's called a Part 135 certificate from the FAA, which is the license that legally allows them to fly you for compensation. When you deal directly with an operator, you are talking to the source. The buck stops with them. Then you have the broker. A broker owns nothing. They don't own jets, they don't employ pilots, they don't have a maintenance hangar. A broker is a middleman. They are an agent. Their job is to connect you, the customer, with an operator's available aircraft. Think of them like a travel agent who specializes in private jets. They have a network of operators they work with, and their value is in searching the entire market to find the best plane for your specific trip. Now, this is crucial. Being a broker is not a bad thing. Some of the best, most reputable companies in the industry are brokers. A great broker can be your advocate, saving you time and money, and coordinating complex trips that a single operator couldn't handle. But the problem is, the barrier to entry for becoming a broker is practically zero. Anyone with a phone and a website can call themselves a private jet broker. And this is where the danger lies. The industry is flooded with what are called ghost brokers. These are people who have no real experience, no direct relationships with operators, and their only skill is marking up a flight as much as possible. They are often just another layer. A middleman to a middleman, adding cost and complexity with every step. They'll use stock photos of jets they have no access to. They'll promise you one aircraft and then, like in my story, put you on an older, cheaper one at the last minute and pocket the difference. Because they have no operational control, when something goes wrong, a mechanical issue, a weather delay, a catering mistake, they are powerless. All they can do is call the real operator, the same call you could have made yourself, and hope for the best. So how do you protect yourself? You have to become an educated consumer, and you start by asking one simple, direct question to anyone you're getting a quote from. The question is, for this specific quote, are you the Part 135 operator of this aircraft? It's a simple yes or no question, but their answer, and more importantly, their reaction to the answer, will tell you everything you need to know. If they say yes, fantastic. You know you're dealing directly with the source. You can then ask them for the tail number of the aircraft and the names of the flight crew. You have a direct line of communication. If they say no, that's not a deal breaker. It just means they are a broker. A good, honest broker will respond with total transparency. They'll say something like, "No, we are the broker for this trip. The operator is XYZ Aviation. They have an impeccable safety record, and we've worked with them for years. We'd be happy to provide you with their safety audits." That is the answer of a professional who is confident in their partners and their value. The giant, flashing red flag is defensiveness or vagueness. If you ask, "Are you the operator?" and they say, "We have access to thousands of planes," or "We are a full-service aviation provider," or "Don't worry about those details, we handle everything," run. They are actively hiding the ball. They don't want you to know who the operator is, either because they are working with a bottom-of-the-barrel company with a questionable safety record, or because they don't want you to go around them and book directly for a lower price. They see you as a transaction, not a client. Understanding this one distinction, the operator versus the broker, is the first and most critical shield you have. Puts you in control. It lets you pierce through the fancy marketing and understand the fundamental structure of your charter. It's the difference between booking a 5-star hotel directly and booking it through a sketchy website you've never heard of. One gives you certainty and recourse. The other is a complete gamble. But knowing who you're dealing with is only half the battle. The other half is the price. And that brings us to the biggest, most seductive myth in private aviation. A myth that costs newcomers a fortune because it preys on their desire to find a deal. I'm talking about the siren song of the empty leg. It's the unicorn of private travel, the deal that seems too good to be true. And you know what they say about those? An empty leg or a ferry flight happens when a private jet flies without passengers. Think about it. Someone books a one-way flight from New York to Los Angeles. The jet drops them off at Van Nuys Airport, but that jet is based back in New York. It has to fly back. That return trip is an empty leg. The operator is already paying for the fuel, the pilots, the landing fees for that flight home. So they think, why not sell those empty seats at a massive discount? It's found money for them, and for you it's the champagne lifestyle on a beer budget. You'll see them advertised everywhere online. Fly private for 75% off. New York to Miami for only $4,000. And your brain starts doing the math. You see a flight that normally costs $16,000, and here it is, a gleaming Gulfstream with your name on it, for the price of a few first-class commercial tickets. It feels like you've discovered a cheat code for the game of life. You feel smart. You feel like you've beaten the system. You picture yourself climbing the air stairs, drink in hand, laughing at all the suckers paying full price. This is the seduction. It's powerful, it's intoxicating, and for 99% of people it's a trap. Because here is the one single non-negotiable truth about an empty leg flight. You are not the client. You are the cargo. The person who booked the original full-price flight, the one that created your empty leg, is the client. And their plans, their whims, their last-minute decisions are all that matter. Your discounted flight is not a flight at all. It's a ghost of a flight, a fragile possibility that depends entirely on someone you've never met, doing exactly what they said they were going to do. Let me paint you a picture. Your best friend is getting married in Aspen. It's a huge, once-in-a-lifetime event. You want to make it special, so you and 3 friends decide to split the cost of a jet. You hunt around and find a perfect empty leg. A beautiful Citation XLS flying from your home airport straight to Aspen, the day before the wedding. The price is incredible. You book it feeling like a genius. You pack your tux, you arrange your transport to the airport, you're ready to go. Then 2 hours before you're supposed to leave, you get a call. The original client, the tech CEO who flew to your city for a meeting, just closed a massive deal. He's decided to celebrate with his team and stay an extra night. His flight, the one that was supposed to create your empty leg, is now leaving tomorrow. So what happens to your flight? It evaporates. It ceases to exist. And the broker you booked with? They'll apologize, sure. They'll give you your money back. But they have zero obligation to find you another plane. They can't. Because now, you're trying to book a last-minute flight to Aspen during peak wedding season. The prices have quadrupled. There are no private jets available for under $30,000. You scramble to find commercial flights, but they're all sold out or have 3 connections. Best case, you end up on a red-eye, crammed in a middle seat, arriving exhausted just hours before the ceremony. Worst case, you missed the wedding. Your friend's wedding. All because you tried to save a few $1,000s by betting on a stranger's schedule. That's the #1 danger. The schedule is not yours. The moment the primary client changes their plan by 10 minutes, 10 hours, or 10 days, your plan is obliterated. But let's say by some miracle the primary client's schedule holds firm. You still face the problem of routing. An empty leg is a fixed route between 2 specific airports. It's almost never a perfect match for your needs. You want to go from New York City to Miami. The empty leg you find is from Teterboro, New Jersey, to Opa-locka Executive Airport, which is north of Miami. Suddenly, your seamless door-to-door private experience involves a 45-minute Uber ride to the airport in Jersey traffic, and another 45-minute Uber ride from an airport you've never heard of in Florida. You've just added 2 to 3 hours of ground-based hassle to your convenient private flight. The dream of pulling your car up to the jet on the tarmac is replaced by the reality of sitting in the back of a Toyota Camry, stuck on the N95. And what about the plane itself? The empty leg might be on a light jet, but you have 6 passengers and a mountain of luggage. It won't work. Or maybe the deal is on a jet that's too old, one that lacks Wi-Fi, or one that's just not up to the safety or comfort standards you expect. You don't get to choose the aircraft. You take what's being offered. The deal is only a deal if it actually fits your mission. Most of the time it doesn't. You're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, compromising on convenience, timing, and aircraft just to chase a low price tag. But the real killer, the thing that makes empty legs a total non-starter for any important trip, is the cancellation rate. We're not just talking about the primary client changing their schedule. The primary client can cancel their trip entirely. Their meeting gets pushed, a family issue comes up, the weather turns bad at their destination. If their flight is canceled, your empty leg booking is instantly, automatically, and irrevocably canceled too. There is no recourse. There is no backup plan offered. You get a refund and a sorry for the inconvenience. The industry-wide cancellation rate for on-demand charter is very low, maybe 2 to 3%. For empty legs, it's estimated to be as high as 30 to 40%. Some operators say it's even higher. You are literally booking a flight that has a nearly 1 in 3 chance of never happening. Would you board a commercial airliner if the pilot announced there was a 30% chance they'd just turn around and go back to the gate? Of course not. So why would you bet your business deal, your family vacation, or your presence at a major life event on those same odds? So are empty legs completely and utterly useless? No, not completely. They exist for a very specific type of traveler. The one with 0 deadlines and maximum flexibility. You're retired, living in Palm Beach. You have no plans for the next 2 weeks. You see a last-minute empty leg to Nantucket for a couple of days. Price is right. If it gets canceled, who cares? You'll just go play golf instead. If it works, great, you get a spontaneous mini vacation. For that person, the empty leg is a fun lottery ticket. But it is not a reliable transportation strategy. It is not a tool for planning. It is a gamble, pure and simple. For any trip that matters, relying on an empty leg is building your house of cards on a windy day. It is the rookie mistake that signals to every charter operator that you're a novice, prioritizing a flashy discount over the very things private aviation is supposed to deliver: reliability, convenience, and peace of mind. You end up with none of them. So if the siren song of the empty leg is a myth, How do you actually figure out if you're getting a fair price on a real full-price charter? How do you look at two quotes for the same trip, one for $20,000 and one for $28,000, and know which one is the right choice? It's not just about the price tag. The real cost is hidden in the details of the aircraft, the operator, and the contract itself. To understand that, you first have to understand the single most important factor that determines the base price of any private flight, a factor that has nothing to do with the jet itself, and everything to do with where it's sleeping the night before your trip. I'm talking about positioning. Positioning, also known as a ferry flight or a deadhead leg, is the silent killer of private jet budgets. It's the invisible cost that can double the price of your trip before you even step on board. And it's the one thing that separates amateurs from savvy flyers. Imagine you want to order a pizza. The pizza itself costs $20. But the pizza place is on the other side of town, and they charge you a $50 delivery fee to bring it to you. You'd be outraged, right? You're paying more for the delivery than for the actual product. That is exactly what a positioning fee is. You're paying for the jet to be delivered to you. Let's break it down. Private jets, unlike commercial airliners, don't live at every airport. Each aircraft has a home base where it's parked, maintained, and where its crew lives. Let's say you live in Denver, Colorado, and you want to book a private jet for a ski trip to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. You find a beautiful jet online, a sleek Citation X, perfect for your group. You call the charter company for a quote. The price comes back and it's a gut punch. It's twice what you expected. You're confused. The flight from Denver to Jackson Hole is only about an hour. Why does it cost as much as a small car? Here's why. That beautiful Citation X you wanted is based in Miami, Florida. So, to pick you up in Denver, that jet first has to fly empty for 3.5 hours from Miami to Denver. Then it flies you for 1 hour to Jackson Hole. After it drops you off, it has to fly another 3.5 hours empty again back to its home base in Miami. You, the client, are on the hook for all of it. You're not just paying for your 1 hour flight. You're paying for the 8 hours of total flight time it takes to get the aircraft from its home to you to your destination and back to its home. The operator has to pay for the fuel for all 8 hours. They have to pay the pilots for all 8 hours. They have to pay for the engine time and maintenance costs for all 8 hours. You only experienced one of those hours, but you footed the bill for the entire journey. This is the #1 mistake first-time charter clients make. They find the perfect jet, but don't ask the single most important question. Where is this aircraft based? Now, on the flip side of this expensive coin is the single most celebrated and most misunderstood concept in private aviation, the empty leg. You've probably heard of them. They're advertised as the secret to flying private for 75% off. And sometimes they are. An empty leg is the positioning flight we just talked about, but sold at a massive discount. Let's go back to our Miami-based jet. The owner has a trip booked from Jackson Hole back to Miami. The jet is already in Jackson Hole from a previous flight. So it has a scheduled one-way empty flight at deadhead leg from Jackson Hole to Miami. The owner is already paying for that flight to happen. The fuel is budgeted, the crew is paid. For the operator, every seat on that flight is pure wasted potential. So they put it on the market as an empty leg. They might offer that 3.5 hour flight, which would normally cost $50,000, for just $15,000. It's a win-win. You get an incredible deal, and the operator makes some extra money on a flight that was already paid for. Sounds like a dream, right? A champagne experience on a beer budget. And it can be. But here is the brutal and censored truth about empty legs that no broker wants to advertise. They are built on a foundation of pure chance, and they can evaporate in an instant. The existence of your empty leg flight is entirely dependent on the person who booked the original, full-price trip. They are the primary client. You are just a passenger of opportunity. If that primary client changes their plans by 1 hour, your empty leg schedule changes by 1 hour. No exceptions. If they decide to leave a day later, your flight leaves a day later. If they get sick or their business deal falls through, and they cancel their trip entirely, your empty leg ceases to exist. It vanishes. Imagine you book a deeply discounted empty leg from New York to Napa Valley for your wedding anniversary. You've booked the non-refundable 5-star hotel, the Michelin star restaurant, the private vineyard tours. You're packed and ready to go. 2 hours before departure, you get a call. The primary client, a tech CEO who was flying from Napa back to New York, just canceled his trip. Your anniversary flight is gone. Now you're stuck. You can either cancel your entire non-refundable vacation, or you can try to book a last-minute charter. which will now cost you 3 times the standard rate because it's last minute. The dream deal has become an absolute nightmare. That is the gamble of the empty leg. It offers a spectacular reward, but it comes with a terrifying risk. For a spontaneous weekend trip where your plans are flexible, can be amazing. For a can't-miss event like a wedding, a critical business meeting, or a major holiday, booking an empty leg is like playing Russian roulette with your itinerary. So how do you get around this? How do you avoid paying for a flight you're not even on, without taking the massive gamble of an empty leg? There are 2 key strategies the pros use. First is understanding the concept of a floating fleet. Some of the largest and most sophisticated operators in the world, like NetJets and VistaJet, don't use a traditional home base model. Their fleets are dynamic, they are constantly moving around the country and the world in response to demand. They use complex logistics software to position their jets in high-demand zones, anticipating where the next flight will be. This means if you want to fly from Denver, they likely already have a jet at that airport or one very close by, finishing up another trip. This drastically reduces or even eliminates positioning costs, because the delivery fee is just a few minutes of flight time from a nearby airport, not a cross-country trek. While these programs are often subscription-based, many modern charter operators now adopt a similar floating model. Always ask your broker if they operate a floating fleet or if they have access to one. Can save you a fortune. The second strategy is what I call the round-trip rule. This is counterintuitive, but for shorter trips, it is almost always cheaper to pay the jet to wait for you than it is to book 2 separate one-way flights. Let's say you want to fly from Los Angeles to Las Vegas for 24 hours. If you book a one-way flight there, the jet will drop you off and likely fly empty back to its base in LA. Then, to pick you up the next day, it has to fly empty from LA back to Vegas. You've just paid for 4 separate flights, even though you were only on 2 of them. The smarter way? Book it as a round trip. You fly from LA to Vegas. The jet and the crew will wait for you overnight. You'll have to pay a daily minimum for the jet and the crew's hotel and expenses, but I guarantee you that cost will be a tiny fraction of what you would pay for the 2 extra positioning flights. For any trip where you're returning within about 48 hours, always get a quote for a round trip with the aircraft waiting. You could save tens of thousands of dollars. Understanding positioning isn't just about saving money. It's about understanding the fundamental economics of the entire industry. It's the invisible chessboard on which every flight is planned. And by knowing how the pieces move, you can protect yourself from checkmate. But even if you find the perfectly positioned jet, and you get a fantastic price, you're still faced with a dizzying array of choices. Because not all jets are created equal. And the wrong choice of aircraft can be more than just uncomfortable. It can be downright dangerous. That's because the age of a jet matters far more than you think, but not for the reason you've been told. Let me guess what you're thinking. An old jet is like an old car. It's rusty, it's unreliable, and the engine could quit at any moment. You're picturing a 25-year-old Gulfstream as a flying death trap, held together with duct tape and a prayer, rattling its way through the sky. You imagine that booking a jet built in the late 90s is like playing Russian roulette at 30,000 feet. And that is precisely the myth that shady brokers and charter companies want you to believe. They use the fear of age to push you into more expensive, newer aircraft, not for your safety but for their commission. The truth is, the single biggest misconception in private aviation is that age equals danger. It's completely fundamentally false. In the world of commercial and private aviation, there is no correlation between the age of an aircraft and its safety record. A 40-year-old Boeing 737 operated by a major airline is statistically just as safe as one that rolled off the assembly line last Tuesday. Why? Because of one word: maintenance. Unlike your car, which you might service once a year, a private jet operating under FAA Part 135 regulations, the strict rules governing charter flights, is subject to a relentless, mind-bogglingly detailed maintenance schedule. Every single component, from the landing gear to the bolts in the passenger seats, has a mandated service life, measured in flight hours or calendar days. When a part hits its limit, it is replaced. Period. It doesn't matter if it looks brand new. The FAA doesn't care about the year the jet was manufactured. They care about its current state of airworthiness. A 1998 Citation X that has undergone every required inspection, every engine overhaul, and every component replacement on schedule is, in the eyes of the FAA and any seasoned pilot, just as safe as a 2024 model. In fact, some mechanics will tell you they trust an older, proven airframe with a long, documented history more than a brand new model that might have undiscovered factory flaws. So if a 25-year-old jet is just as safe, why am I telling you this is one of the most critical things you need to know? Because the real danger of an older jet isn't a threat to your life. It's a threat to your wallet, your time, and the entire experience you're paying a fortune for. The age of the jet matters tremendously, but it's all about the three things brokers never want to discuss in detail: technology, performance, and the refurbishment trap. Let's start with technology. The jet you're chartering might have the airframe of a classic, but does it have the technology of a museum piece? The number one complaint from passengers on older aircraft is the Wi-Fi. A broker might tell you a jet has Wi-Fi, but that's like saying a flip phone can access the internet. There's a universe of difference between modern high-speed Ka-band satellite internet that lets you stream 4K movies and run a Zoom call flawlessly, and the ancient air-to-ground systems found on many jets from the early 2000s. That older system might give you just enough bandwidth to send a text message, if you're lucky. Trying to download a large file or watch a YouTube video becomes a cruel joke. You're paying thousands of dollars an hour to be disconnected from the world. And it's not just Wi-Fi. It's the lack of USB ports for charging your devices. It's the clunky, low-resolution cabin entertainment system that looks like it was pulled from a 2002 minivan. But most importantly, it's the cabin pressurization. This is a huge, often overlooked factor in passenger comfort. Newer aircraft are designed to maintain a much lower cabin altitude. For example, a new Gulfstream can maintain a sea-level cabin pressure at altitudes up to 30,000 feet, and a cabin altitude of around 4,000 feet when it's cruising at 51,000 feet. An older jet might have a cabin altitude of 8,000 feet. That difference is enormous. At 8,000 feet, the air is thinner, your body gets less oxygen, and you arrive at your destination feeling groggy, dehydrated, and with a pounding headache. You paid for luxury and convenience, but you feel like you just ran a marathon in the mountains. Next, let's talk about performance. Aircraft design has come a long way in 20 years. Newer jets are significantly more fuel efficient. While you might not be paying for fuel directly, that inefficiency is baked into the hourly rate and the jet's operational capabilities. The biggest performance factor for you, the passenger, is range. Let's say you want to fly from New York to Los Angeles. A modern Praetor 600 or a Global 6000 can make that trip non-stop, easily. But an older jet like a Challenger 601 simply doesn't have the legs. It will have to make a fuel stop in somewhere like Kansas City or Omaha. That fuel stop is a silent trip killer. Your broker won't highlight it. They'll just quote you a slightly lower hourly rate. But that stop adds at least an hour to your journey time. You have to descend, land, taxi, refuel, and then go through the whole takeoff and climb process again. You're paying for that extra hour of flight time on the hops meter. You're paying for the landing fees. And most importantly, you're losing an hour of your life sitting on a tarmac in the middle of the country. Your cheaper jet just became more expensive and much less convenient. This also limits your options. Many older jets can't handle hot and high airports like Aspen or Telluride in the summer, because their engine performance isn't good enough in the thin, hot air. Your choice of aircraft directly dictates your freedom of movement. Finally, and this is the most deceptive part, we have the refurbishment trap. This is where even savvy flyers get caught. A broker will send you beautiful, glossy photos of a 20-year-old jet that has a brand new interior. It has pristine white leather seats, new carpeting, and gleaming wood veneer. It looks incredible. You think you're getting a bargain, the experience of a new jet for the price of an old one. This is the ultimate lipstick on a pig scenario in private aviation. That gorgeous new interior means nothing. It's a cosmetic facelift that hides an aging, inefficient, and technologically obsolete machine. They've reupholstered the seats, but they haven't replaced the 1990s era cabin insulation. So the flight is louder. They've installed new woodwork, but they haven't upgraded the slow, unreliable Wi-Fi antenna. And they certainly haven't changed the old engines that burn more fuel and can't get you coast to coast without stopping. They haven't fixed the old pressurization system that's going to give you a headache. You are sitting in a beautiful room, but that room is inside a noisy, inefficient, and technologically primitive vehicle. You've been sold on the sizzle, but the steak is 2 decades old. So, the critical takeaway is this: the hourly rate is a seductive lie. An older jet might be $1,000 less per hour, but it could end up costing you more in total trip cost, and it will absolutely cost you in comfort and convenience. When you're looking at a quote, you have to ask the hard questions. What year was the aircraft manufactured? And just as importantly, when was it last refurbished? And what exactly did that refurbishment include? Was it just new seats? Or was it a full technological overhaul with a modern cabin management system and high-speed Wi-Fi? Ask about the jet's non-stop range for your specific trip. Ask about the cabin altitude it maintains at cruising speed. Choosing the right aircraft isn't about picking the newest, shiniest plane. It's about understanding the trade-offs. Sometimes an older, well-maintained jet is perfectly fine for a short, one-hour hop. But for a cross-country flight where you need to work, stay connected, and arrive feeling refreshed, the age and technological capability of the aircraft are paramount. You've avoided the safety myth, and now you've seen past the refurbishment trap. You're ready to select the perfect aircraft for your mission. But this is the exact moment where the vast majority of first-time private flyers get absolutely destroyed. Because the price you're quoted for that perfect jet is almost never the price you actually pay. The real cost is hidden in plain sight, buried in a single line of your charter agreement that 99% of people skim right over. And that one line can cost you tens of thousands of dollars. It's called the variable costs clause. And the most dangerous part of it, the part that absolutely bankrupts first-time charter budgets, often boils down to two simple words: de-icing extra. It sounds harmless, right? An add-on like extra guacamole. But in the world of private aviation, those two words can be a financial sledgehammer. Let me tell you about a client of mine. We'll call him David. David was a tech entrepreneur who just sold his company. To celebrate, he booked a surprise ski trip to Aspen for his wife and 2 kids. He chartered a beautiful Challenger 350 out of Miami. He negotiated a great price, or so he thought. The quote was sharp, the jet looked incredible in the photos, and he was imagining the look on his family's faces. The flight to Colorado was flawless. Champagne, movies for the kids, a perfect start to a dream vacation. As they began their descent into Aspen, the pilot came on the intercom. "Folks, just a heads up. We've got some light snow here on the ground. Nothing to worry about, just giving you the report." They landed smoothly, the snow was beautiful, and the vacation was everything he'd dreamed of. A week later, back in Miami, the final invoice hit his email. He opened it, expecting to see the number he'd agreed to. Instead, the total was almost $35,000 higher. He thought it was a typo. He scrolled down, his heart pounding, and there it was. A single line item. De-icing services. Aspen/Pitkin County Airport, $34,800. David was floored. He was furious. He called the broker, yelling, confused, feeling completely scammed. How could 2 words he barely noticed cost more than a brand new car? Welcome to the single most misunderstood and financially devastating aspect of private flying in winter. De-icing isn't optional. It's a non-negotiable federal aviation safety requirement. When an aircraft sits on the ground in freezing temperatures, even a thin layer of frost, snow, or ice can accumulate on the wings and control surfaces. You might think a little frost is no big deal, but at 500 miles per hour, that nearly invisible layer disrupts the airflow over the wing, the very principle that creates lift. It can reduce lift by over 30% and increase drag by 40%. It is, without exaggeration, one of the most dangerous conditions a plane can take off in. So the plane has to be cleaned. This isn't a guy with a squeegee. It's a massive specialized truck that sprays a heated mixture of propylene glycol and water. This is called Type 1 fluid. It's orange, and its job is to break the bond of the ice and snow and clean the wing. But if it's actively snowing or freezing rain, they need a second step. They apply a thick, green gel-like substance called Type 4 fluid. This is an anti-icing fluid that sticks to the plane and prevents new ice from forming for a certain period of time, called the holdover time, giving the pilots a safe window to taxi and take off. This process is a symphony of expensive parts. The fluid itself is incredibly costly, sometimes over $30 a gallon, and a heavy jet might need hundreds of gallons. The specialized trucks cost a fortune. The crew operating them requires extensive training and certification. And the airports, especially exclusive mountain airports like Aspen or Telluride, charge a premium for these services. So when David's Challenger 350 got hit by a snowstorm while it was parked for the week, it got covered. To make it safe for his family's flight home, it needed a full bath and thousands of dollars worth of fluid. And because his contract had those 2 little words, de-icing extra, the entire uncut, unfiltered cost was passed directly to him. The operator didn't mark it up. They didn't profit from it. They just paid the bill and forwarded it to the person who was contractually obligated to pay it. David. He had no choice. And de-icing is just the tip of the iceberg. The variable cost clause is a Pandora's box of budget-destroying surprises. Let's say you're flying from New York to Los Angeles. A thunderstorm pops up over the Midwest. Air traffic control has to reroute your flight, adding an extra 45 minutes of flight time. Guess who pays for that extra fuel and flight time? You do. What if your meeting runs late and you delay your departure by a few hours, causing the flight crew to exceed their maximum legal duty day? Now the operator has to pay for their hotel rooms, meals, and transportation. That bill, often $1,000 or more per night, goes straight to you. It's called a run or remain overnight charge. Flying internationally, the costs for international handling, customs clearance, landing permits, and navigation fees can be wildly unpredictable. A last-minute change to your passenger list could require refiling permits, costing you thousands in administrative fees and potential delays. Even Wi-Fi can get you. That free Wi-Fi on board? It often has a data cap. If your kids start streaming 4K movies for a 5-hour flight, you could be looking at a multi-$1,000 overage bill. The charter quote is a snapshot in time, a perfect world scenario. It assumes perfect weather, on-time departures, and no surprises. But aviation by its very nature is dynamic. It's a world of variables. And a standard charter agreement is designed to place the financial risk for every single one of those variables squarely on your shoulders. So how do you protect yourself from a $35,000 surprise? You have to change the game before you even sign the contract. You need to learn the difference between a floating quote and an all-inclusive or fixed-price quote. A floating quote is what most brokers send. It's the base price plus all the variables we just discussed. It looks attractive because the number is lower, but it's a trap. What you need to demand is a fixed-price quote. You need to use specific language. When you get a quote, your first question shouldn't be, "Can you do better on the price?" It should be, "Does this price include a de-icing allowance?" Or even better, "Can you provide a fixed, all-inclusive price for this trip?" A good broker, a true aviation advisor, will be able to do this. They can analyze the historical weather data for your destination, the time of year, and the size of the aircraft, and they can build a de-icing budget into the price. It might make the initial quote look $1,000 or $2,000 higher than a competitor's, but it caps your liability. You're essentially buying insurance against a catastrophic bill. You need to ask, what is your policy on crew overnight charges if we are delayed by weather or air traffic control? Are all federal excise taxes, segment fees, and landing fees included in this price? You are moving the risk from yourself back to the operator or the broker, who is far more equipped to manage it. By asking these questions, you're not just clarifying costs, you're sending a powerful signal. You're signaling that you are an educated, sophisticated client, not a first-timer who can be taken advantage of. You're forcing transparency in an industry that often thrives on complexity. Getting the price locked down is a critical battle to win. But here's the scary part. Even if you get a rock-solid, all-inclusive price and protect yourself from every hidden fee, you could still be making the single biggest mistake of your life. Because you could be booking a perfectly priced flight on an aircraft that is statistically a ticking time bomb. The safety rating you see on a broker's website is almost meaningless. A piece of marketing fluff designed to make you feel secure. The real measure of an aircraft's safety is hidden deep within maintenance logs and operational histories. And there's only one way to truly vet the machine you're about to put your family on. It's called demanding the operator's air carrier certificate. And if your broker hesitates for even a second to provide it, you walk away. Because what they might be hiding is the single most dangerous secret in the private aviation industry. This brings us to the third thing you absolutely must know before you ever book a private jet: the hidden world of illegal, or gray market, charters. Imagine this for a moment. You've just sold a company, or maybe you've had a spectacular quarter. To celebrate, you're taking your family on a once-in-a-lifetime trip. You find a deal online for a beautiful Challenger 350. The price is incredible, almost 25% less than the other quotes you received. The pictures are perfect, the broker is responsive, and you're feeling like a genius for finding such an amazing value. You book the flight. The day comes, the jet is immaculate, the pilots are sharp. You have an incredible trip. You think to yourself, this is it. I've found the secret. You use the same service again and again. Everything is perfect, until it isn't. What you don't know is that you haven't been flying on a legitimate charter aircraft. You've been flying on a privately owned plane, one that is legally forbidden from carrying paying passengers. The owner is just a wealthy individual trying to make a little money on the side to offset their astronomical ownership costs, the hangar fees, the insurance, the pilot salaries. And the broker you used? They're just a middleman, connecting you to this illegal operation for a quiet commission. You've unknowingly stepped into the gray market. And the entire time you felt safe and savvy, you were sitting on a ticking time bomb. Here's the terrifying truth. In the United States, there are two primary sets of rules for flying: Part 91 and Part 135. Think of Part 91 as the rules for a private car owner. You can drive your own car, you can take your friends and family for a ride, but the second you start charging people for a lift, you're an illegal taxi. You need a commercial license, special insurance, and you have to follow a much stricter set of regulations. Part 135 is the aviation equivalent of that commercial license. It is the gold standard, the only legal way to conduct on-demand charter flights for paying customers. The requirements to become a Part 135 certified operator are monumental. The FAA scrutinizes every single aspect of the operation: pilot training and rest requirements, drug and alcohol testing programs, aircraft maintenance schedules, operational control procedures, company manuals that are hundreds of pages long. It is an expensive, time-consuming, and brutally rigorous process designed for one thing and one thing only: your safety. A Part 91 private owner doesn't have to deal with any of that. Their rules are far more relaxed. And that's where the danger lies. The owner of that beautiful Challenger 350 you chartered illegally? He might be a great guy, but his operation is not being watched by the FAA with the same hawk-like intensity. His pilots, they aren't subject to the same strict flight and duty time limitations as Part 135 pilots. So the captain greeting you with a smile could have just completed a grueling 16-hour duty day flying the owner's family back from Europe. He's exhausted, his judgment is impaired, but there's no strict regulatory framework to force him to rest. He wants the extra money from your flight, so he gets back in the cockpit. The maintenance? A Part 135 aircraft is on a continuous FAA-approved inspection program. It's a living, breathing schedule of preventative care. A Part 91 aircraft just needs to meet the minimum annual inspection requirements. It's the difference between a Formula One race car, which is constantly monitored and tweaked by a team of engineers, and your personal car that you take to the shop once a year. Both might be legal to operate, but which one would you rather be in at 500 miles per hour, 41,000 feet in the air? But here is the single most catastrophic risk of flying on a gray market charter. It's the one that can financially ruin you and your family forever. Insurance. When you fly on a legal Part 135 charter, the operator is required to carry massive commercial liability insurance policies, often in the hundreds of millions of dollars. This policy is specifically designed to cover paying passengers, but the insurance policy for a Part 91 private aircraft explicitly prohibits commercial operations. The moment the owner accepts money for your flight, that insurance policy is instantly void. It becomes a worthless piece of paper. So if there's an incident, not even a crash, just a hard landing that causes an injury or a runway excursion, and you or your family members are hurt, you are on your own. There is no 9-figure insurance policy to cover medical bills, lost income, or lifelong care. You would have to sue the aircraft owner directly, hoping their personal assets can cover the damage. And you can be certain their lawyers will argue that you knowingly participated in an illegal flight, shifting the blame. You thought you were saving $10,000 on a flight, but you were unknowingly gambling with your entire financial future and the well-being of the people you love most. So how do you protect yourself? How do you spot these illegal charters that are expertly disguised as legitimate businesses? There are a few critical red flags. First, as we said, the price that is too good to be true. If you get 4 quotes for a flight from New York to Miami and one of them is dramatically, almost unbelievably, cheaper than the others, don't celebrate. Investigate. Legitimate Part 135 operators have similar overhead costs: fuel, crew, maintenance programs, insurance. The pricing is competitive, but it exists within a certain range. An outlier price is a giant red flag that someone is cutting corners, and those corners are often regulatory. Second, watch out for complex paperwork, specifically something called a dry lease. This is the most common trick in the book. To get around the law, the illegal operator will have you sign 2 separate agreements. One is a lease agreement, where you technically lease the aircraft itself. The second is an agreement with a separate company to provide the pilots. They'll tell you this is standard procedure. It is not. This convoluted structure is a legal facade designed to make a Part 91 flight look like a non-commercial one. If you are ever presented with 2 separate contracts for the plane and the crew, do not sign. You are being led into an illegal charter. A legitimate Part 135 charter is one simple agreement, with one certified company, for one all-inclusive service. Third, and most importantly, ask for the paperwork. Before you wire a single dollar, you ask your broker or the operator for two documents: their FAA Air Carrier Certificate, which will have their unique certificate number, and the certificate of insurance for the specific aircraft you will be flying on. A legitimate operator will provide these to you in minutes, without question. It's a point of pride. An illegal operator will make excuses. They'll say it's confidential, or that they'll provide it at the airport, or they'll simply stop responding. Their hesitation is your confirmation that something is wrong. You can even take their certificate number and cross-reference it on the FAA's database to ensure it's active and valid. This isn't about being difficult. It's about due diligence. The private aviation world, for all its luxury, has a dark, unregulated underbelly. And savvy brokers and illegal operators prey on the ignorance of new clients who are just excited to be flying private and don't know the right questions to ask. They are counting on you to be impressed by the leather seats and champagne, and not to look behind the curtain. So you've dodged the illegal charters, you verified the operator is a legitimate Part 135 carrier. You're safe now, right? Not quite. Because even within the world of perfectly legal charter, there's a hidden cost that blindsides 99% of first-time flyers, and it has nothing to do with the hourly rate. It's a silent budget killer that can turn a $10,000 flight into a $20,000 nightmare overnight. This silent killer is called the variable invoice. You see, when you get a quote for a private jet, you're often looking at the base hourly rate multiplied by the flight time. It looks clean. It looks simple. A 3-hour flight on a $4,000 per hour jet is $12,000. Done. You sign the contract feeling like a boss. But what you've actually signed isn't a fixed-price contract. It's a blank check. You've agreed to the base rate, but you've also implicitly agreed to a host of other charges that the operator has no idea how to quote in advance, and they will hit your credit card like a lightning strike days after you've already returned home, tanned and relaxed. Let me tell you a story about a guy we'll call Mark. Mark sold his software company. He wasn't a billionaire, but he was comfortable. For his wife's 40th birthday, he wanted to do something truly unforgettable. He decided to take her and their 2 kids on a ski trip to Aspen, Colorado, for a long weekend. Instead of the chaos of commercial airports, he decided to charter a private jet. It was the ultimate surprise. He called a charter broker he found online, and they quoted him a fantastic price on a beautiful Citation CJ3. The quote was for $12,500 round trip. Seemed like a lot, but for a once-in-a-lifetime memory, he figured it was worth it. The broker sent the contract, Mark signed it, and he started dreaming of sipping champagne at 41,000 feet. The trip was flawless. The jet was immaculate, the pilots were professional, the kids' faces were priceless. They landed in Aspen, had an incredible weekend on the slopes, and flew home feeling on top of the world. Mark felt like he had finally made it. 2 weeks later, the final invoice hit his email. He opened it, expecting to see the $12,500 charge he'd agreed to. Instead, the number at the bottom of the page was $24,275. His heart sank. He thought it was a typo. It wasn't. So what happened? Mark fell victim to the 3 deadliest hidden costs in private aviation. The first one, and the one that gets almost everyone, is repositioning fees. You see, the jet Mark chartered wasn't based in his home city of Dallas. Its home base was in Scottsdale, Arizona. So, for Mark's trip to even begin, the jet had to fly empty from Scottsdale to Dallas to pick him up. That's a 2-hour flight. That's $8,000 of flight time before Mark even stepped on board. Then, after it dropped him off in Aspen, it didn't just wait there for 3 days for free. The operator had another client, so it flew empty from Aspen to its next pickup in Denver. And when it was time for Mark to go home, a different jet had to fly empty from Salt Lake City to Aspen to get him. These empty flights are called ferry legs or repositioning legs, and you, the charter client, pay for every single second of it. It's like ordering a pizza and having to pay the delivery driver for his drive from his house to the restaurant before he even picks up your food. Unless the broker is sourcing an aircraft based right at your departure airport, you are paying for its commute. The second killer cost that hit Mark was de-icing. They were flying out of Aspen in February. It was cold. It had snowed the night before. Before takeoff, the captain informed Mark that the wings had accumulated a bit of frost. For safety, the aircraft needed to be de-iced. Mark just nodded. Okay, sure. Do what you gotta do. He had no idea what he had just agreed to. De-icing isn't just a guy with a spray bottle. It's a massive specialized truck spraying a superheated, chemically complex fluid that can cost hundreds of dollars per gallon. And they don't just use 1 gallon. A light jet like Mark's can require 50 to 100 gallons, and a larger jet can require hundreds. The final bill for that 15-minute procedure? $6,000. It's a non-negotiable safety item. The pilot has the final say, and your only choice is to pay it or not fly. And guess what? You're still on the hook for the cost of the flight, even if you cancel it because you refuse to pay for de-icing. It's the perfect financial trap. The third thing that bled Mark's wallet dry was the laundry list of smaller fees that feel like death by 1,000 cuts. There was the federal excise tax, which is 7.5% of the total flight cost. There were landing fees at Aspen-Pitkin County Airport, one of the most expensive airports in the country. There were ramp fees, overnight parking fees for the aircraft, and a winter operations surcharge from the local FBO, the private terminal. He'd also requested a specific type of champagne and sushi for the flight back. He assumed catering was included. It is, but standard catering is usually just a fruit tray and some mini muffins. His special request added another $900 to the bill. So let's look at the math. His $12,500 dream flight was actually just the base cost. Add $5,000 in repositioning fees. Add $6,000 for that one-time de-icing spray. Add over $1,000 in taxes plus landing fees, plus his sushi and champagne. Suddenly $24,000 starts to make a horrifying amount of sense. Mark's once-in-a-lifetime memory was now tainted by the bitter taste of a financial sucker punch. So how do you protect yourself from this? How do you make sure your dream flight doesn't turn into a financial nightmare? First, you must demand to know if your quote is a hard quote or just an estimate. An estimate is basically worthless. It's a teaser rate. A hard quote means the operator is locking in the price of the aircraft, the crew, and all standard fees. It won't protect you from variable costs like de-icing, but it stops the broker from lowballing you on the flight time and repositioning. Second, you must always ask, where is this aircraft's home base? If the answer isn't the airport you're departing from, you need to ask for a detailed breakdown of the repositioning costs. A good broker will try to find you a transient aircraft, one that is already in your city and needs to get to your destination anyway. This is how you find one-way deals and avoid those killer ferry fees. Third, you have to talk about the variables up front. If you are flying to a cold weather destination in the winter, you need to ask the broker, what is the typical cost for de-icing a jet of this size at this airport? And what is the absolute worst-case scenario? They might not be able to give you an exact number, but they can give you a range. Knowing you might be on the hook for an extra $3,000 to $7,000 changes your decision-making process entirely. Ask about catering costs. Ask about landing fees. Act like you've done this before even if you haven't. A knowledgeable client is far less likely to be taken advantage of. Mark's story isn't an exaggeration. It happens every single day. The private aviation world is built on a lack of transparency, preying on the excitement and inexperience of first-time flyers. They bank on the fact that you'll be too embarrassed or intimidated to question the costs. But by simply asking these 3 questions, is this a hard quote? Where is the plane based? And what are the estimated variable costs? You shift the power dynamic instantly. You transform from a wide-eyed tourist into a savvy consumer. You force them to be transparent. Getting the price right is a massive hurdle, and if you follow these rules, you'll be ahead of 99% of the people chartering jets. But even if you get a rock-solid, all-inclusive quote and dodge every hidden fee, there's a far more dangerous trap waiting for you on the tarmac. It's a secret the industry doesn't want you to know about the very metal tube you're about to fly in at 40,000 feet. And choosing the wrong one isn't just a financial mistake. It could be the last mistake you ever make. Let's talk about the plane. Because when you strip away the champagne and the leather seats, you're left with a highly complex machine. A collection of millions of parts, all flying in formation at 8 miles above the Earth. And the single most dangerous assumption you can make is that every private jet is maintained to the same standard. It is not. Not even close. The industry has a term for the companies that operate these aircraft. They're called operators. And the plane you book is only as safe as the operator behind it. See, when you look at a listing for a 10-year-old Gulfstream versus a brand new one, your instinct might be to assume the new one is safer. That's logical, but it's wrong. The age of a jet's airframe is one of the least important factors in its safety. What truly matters, is its maintenance history, its operational standards, and its paper trail. A 20-year-old jet maintained by a top-tier, safety-obsessed operator is infinitely safer than a 2-year-old jet flown by a company cutting corners to offer the lowest price. So how do you tell the difference? How do you, someone who isn't an FAA inspector or an aeronautical engineer, peek behind the curtain? You look for two names: Argus and Wyvern. These aren't airlines. They aren't brokers. They are independent third-party auditors. Think of them as the private investigation firms of the aviation world. Their only job is to scrutinize every single aspect of an operator's business, from the maintenance logs of every single plane to the training records of every single pilot, the company's financial health, even its safety culture. They dig through everything, and then they issue a rating. This rating is the single most important piece of information you can have when booking a jet, and it's something the budget brokers hope you never ask about, because getting a top-tier rating is incredibly difficult and expensive. It's a commitment. Let's look at Argus. They have a tiered system. The basic level just confirms an operator is legal to fly. That's the bare minimum. Then you have Argus Gold. This is a much deeper dive. They look at aircraft history, pilot experience, and insurance coverage. It's a good rating. Many reputable operators are Argus Gold. But then there's Argus Platinum. This is the holy grail. To get Platinum, an operator has to do everything required for Gold, and then they have to undergo a grueling 2-day on-site audit. Inspectors physically show up at their hangar, crawl inside their planes, and put every single procedure, every logbook, every employee under a microscope. It is the highest standard of safety in private aviation. Less than 5% of all charter operators in the United States achieve this rating. Wyvern has a similar top-tier rating called Wyvern Wingman, which also requires an on-site audit and is held in the same high regard. Now, why does this matter so much, especially as we head into 2026? Let me tell you a story about two different travelers, both booking a trip from New York to Aspen for a ski weekend. First, we have Mark. Mark is a successful tech entrepreneur, smart, but new to private aviation. He gets quotes from a few brokers. One comes in $7,000 cheaper than the others. $7,000. It's on a slightly older Learjet, but the pictures look great. He thinks, it's a private jet. How different can they be? He books it. He doesn't ask about the operator. He doesn't ask about safety ratings. He just sees the savings. The day of the trip, the plane is an hour late. When it finally arrives, it looks a little more worn than the pictures. Inside, a panel is loose, and one of the window shades is broken. Minor stuff, he thinks. They take off, but an hour into the flight, the captain comes on the intercom. A calm voice, but you can hear the tension underneath. A sensor is acting up. They need to divert to Omaha to have it checked out. They land safely, but now they're stuck. The operator doesn't have another plane nearby. They don't have a backup plan. Mark and his family spend 6 hours in a drab airport terminal in Omaha before the operator finally tells them they'll have to book a commercial flight the next day. The ski weekend is ruined. The $7,000 he saved evaporated into a vortex of stress, frustration, and a lost vacation. What he doesn't know is that the operator he chose has no third-party safety rating. They do the bare minimum required by the FAA. The sensor that failed was a known issue on that model, but they had deferred the recommended service to save money. Now let's look at Jessica. She's also a successful founder, booking the same trip. She gets a range of quotes, including the cheaper one Mark saw. But her broker, a true professional, explains the difference. He says, the less expensive option is operated by a company with no independent safety audit. The other option, for a bit more, is on a jet run by an Argus Platinum operator. He sends her the report. She sees the operator's name, sees the Platinum rating. She sees the history of on-site audits. She understands that the extra cost isn't for fancier champagne. It's for a verified, audited, institutional commitment to safety and operational excellence. She books the Platinum-rated jet. The day of her flight, her car pulls right up to the plane. The pilots greet her by name. The jet is immaculate. The flight is flawless. They land in Aspen, and her bags are in her waiting car before she even steps off the plane. Her vacation starts the second she gets on board. The difference in her experience wasn't luck. It was a choice. She paid for certainty. She paid for a system. She paid for the peace of mind that comes from knowing the company you're trusting with your life has voluntarily subjected itself to the highest possible level of scrutiny. This isn't just about a ruined vacation. The post-2020 boom in private aviation put an enormous strain on the system. A flood of new customers created a surge in demand, and many operators brought older aircraft out of long-term storage to meet it. At the same time, global supply chain disruptions have made getting specific aircraft parts a nightmare, and there's a critical shortage of experienced, qualified aviation mechanics. Think about what that means for 2026. You have more planes flying, many of them older, with a strained supply chain for parts and fewer expert mechanics to service them. This is a perfect storm. In this environment, an operator's commitment to maintenance and safety isn't just a feature, it's everything. An Argus Platinum or Wyvern Wingman rating is your proof that the operator has the systems, the personnel, and the financial stability to navigate these challenges without compromising your safety. They are the ones who have the established relationships to get the right parts. They are the ones who pay top dollar to retain the best mechanics. They are the ones with backup aircraft and contingency plans. So when you book, you must ask the question, who is the operator, and what is their Argus or Wyvern rating? If your broker says, don't worry about it, or they're FAA certified, that's a massive red flag. Every operator has to be FAA certified to exist. That's like saying a restaurant has a business license. You want to know if they've gone above and beyond. Ask for the report. Ask for the operator's name. A good broker will give it to you instantly and be proud to do so. A shady one will hesitate. That hesitation tells you everything you need to know. Choosing the right aircraft operated by the right company is the bedrock of a safe and successful journey. But even the most perfectly maintained, platinum-rated jet is useless without the right people sitting in the front two seats. And that brings us to the most critical human element of your flight, and the industry's next big secret for 2026, the pilot crisis. Because the person with their hands on the controls might not be who you think they are. For decades, the two people up front represented the gold standard of aviation. The grizzled, silver-haired captain with 20,000 hours, who's seen everything twice, and his sharp, capable first officer, a future captain in the making. This image, this promise of unparalleled experience, is a core part of what you're paying for. But the massive seismic shifts happening in the airline industry are shattering that image. And by 2026, it will be completely broken. The problem starts with a simple number: 65. That's the mandatory retirement age for airline pilots in the United States. And right now, we are staring down the barrel of a mass exodus. Thousands upon thousands of the most experienced pilots at major airlines like Delta, United, and American are hanging up their hats. This has created a vacuum, a black hole of demand so powerful it's warping the entire aviation landscape. To fill these empty cockpit seats, the major airlines are on a hiring frenzy unlike anything we have ever seen. They're offering signing bonuses that look like lottery winnings, $100,000, even $200,000 just to show up. They're offering salaries approaching $500,000 a year, with rock-solid schedules, incredible benefits, and the prestige of flying the biggest jets on the planet. Now, imagine you're a highly experienced private jet captain. You've got 10,000 hours. You're at the top of your game, but your schedule is a nightmare. You're on call 24/7. You might get a call at 10 p.m. to fly a CEO from New York to LA by sunrise. You miss birthdays, you miss anniversaries. The pay is good, but it's not $500,000 good. Then one day United Airlines calls. They offer you a $150,000 check, a predictable schedule where you're home most nights, and a path to commanding a Boeing 787 Dreamliner. What do? You take the deal. Of course you do. And thousands of pilots just like you are making that exact same choice. This is the great pilot migration. The absolute best, most experienced pilots are being systematically siphoned out of the private charter world and into the major airlines. And this is leaving a terrifying void. Charter operators are now in a desperate scramble to fill those empty captain seats. And where do they find the pilots? They have to lower their standards. Not below the legal FAA minimums, of course, but the gap between the legal minimum and the seasoned expertise you think you're paying for has become a chasm. A few years ago, a reputable charter company wouldn't even look at a pilot for a captain's position on a mid-sized jet unless they had, say, 5,000 hours of total flight time, with at least 1,000 hours in that specific type of aircraft. That was the unwritten rule, the industry standard that kept everyone safe. Today, those numbers are in a free-fall. Companies are being forced to upgrade first officers to captains far earlier in their careers. That pilot in the left seat, the one you're trusting with your family's lives, might have just 2,500 hours instead of 5,000. They might have just 100 hours in that specific jet instead of 1,000. They are legally qualified, yes, but are they experienced? Think of it like this. Would you rather have a surgery performed by a doctor who just graduated medical school, or by a chief of surgery with 20 years of experience? Both are legally licensed doctors. But when an unexpected complication arises on the operating table, or at 41,000 feet in a thunderstorm, who do you want holding the scalpel? Experience is what creates the margin of safety. It's the calm voice that says, "I've seen this before." When an engine sputters or the landing gear won't come down, it's the muscle memory that can handle a violent crosswind landing without a second thought. And that deep well of experience is what is rapidly draining out of the private jet industry. But it gets even more concerning. This creates a domino effect known as the experience gradient problem. With the slightly less experienced first officers being promoted to captain, who fills their now empty first officer seat? The answer is increasingly very new pilots. We're talking about pilots with as little as 1,500 total hours, sometimes even less, who are fresh out of flight school. Their primary goal isn't to be a career charter pilot. It's to build flight time as quickly as possible to get their own shot at the airlines. The private jet you're on is just a stepping stone for them. So now the cockpit dynamic has been dangerously altered. Instead of two highly experienced pilots backing each other up, you might have a newly minted captain with minimal command experience, sitting next to a very green first officer who is still learning the ropes. The safety net of a two-person, highly experienced crew has been frayed to a single thread. If your new captain makes a mistake or faces a situation they've never seen before, their co-pilot may not have the depth of experience to catch it or offer a viable solution. To plug these ever-widening gaps, the charter industry has become heavily reliant on something else: contract pilots. These are freelance pilots who aren't full-time employees of the charter company you booked with. They might fly a Gulfstream for your operator on Monday, a Challenger for a different company on Wednesday, and a Falcon for a third on Friday. While many contract pilots are excellent, this system introduces a huge variable: consistency. A full-time dedicated crew flies the same few jets day in and day out. They know every single quirk and noise of that specific aircraft. They train together constantly. They operate under one unified safety culture and set of procedures. A contract pilot, however skilled, is an outsider. Are they perfectly familiar with this operator's specific emergency protocols? Do they have the same seamless rapport with the other pilot, whom they may have just met an hour ago? This erosion of the dedicated, cohesive crew model is another hidden risk that customers are unknowingly accepting. So how do you protect yourself in 2026? You have to become your own safety advocate. You have to ask the questions no one else thinks to ask. When you get a quote from a broker or an operator, you need to push back with specific, non-negotiable demands for information. Don't just ask if the pilots are qualified. Ask, what are the total flight hours for the captain assigned to my flight? And what are the total hours for the first officer? Then ask the killer question. How many hours does each pilot have in this specific make and model of aircraft? A pilot with 8,000 hours is great, but if only 50 of those hours are in the jet you're about to fly, that's a red flag. You have the right to request a crew sheet in advance, which details the pilot's experience. If the operator hesitates or refuses to provide this, walk away immediately. Transparency is the hallmark of a safe operator. Secrecy is the sign of an operator with something to hide. A great operator will be proud to show you they staffed their jets with 10,000-hour captains. A struggling operator will give you excuses. Furthermore, you need to verify the operator's third-party safety rating. The two biggest names are Argus and Wyvern. Look for an operator that is, at a minimum, Argus Gold Plus or even better, Argus Platinum. The equivalent for Wyvern is Wyvern Wingman. These aren't just fancy plaques for the wall. To get these ratings, operators have to submit to grueling on-site audits of their maintenance, their training, and most importantly, their pilot experience standards. These auditors verify that the company isn't just meeting the bare-bones FAA minimums, but is adhering to a much higher standard of safety, the standard you're paying for. If an operator doesn't have one of these ratings, you need to have a very, very good reason to fly with them. You have to be proactive. You have to be demanding. Because the market dynamics of 2026 will force many operators to cut corners in the one area where corners can never be cut: the experience and quality of the human beings with their hands on the controls. So you've done it. You've navigated the murky world of ownership models. You've dodged the phantom fleet. You've inspected the jet's history, and now you've even verified the deep experience of your flight crew. You have built a fortress of safety and certainty around your trip. You think every variable is accounted for. But there is one final trap: an invisible tripwire hidden deep in the fine print of your contract. It has nothing to do with the plane or the pilots, but it has everything to do with money, and it can financially cripple your entire trip, turning a $50,000 flight into a $100,000 nightmare before you even leave the ground. This devastating financial trap is called payment diversion fraud, and it is the single biggest threat to anyone chartering a private aircraft in the modern age. It's a silent predator in the world of high-value transactions, and it's becoming terrifyingly sophisticated. Imagine this scenario. You've done everything right. You researched brokers, you compared aircraft, you negotiated a fantastic price on a beautiful Gulf Stream for a once-in-a-lifetime family vacation to Hawaii. The total cost? $65,000. The broker, who has been professional and responsive, sends you the charter agreement. You sign it, scan it, and email it back. A few minutes later, an email arrives. It's from your broker. It has the company logo, the correct flight itinerary, the tail number of the aircraft, and the final invoice. At the bottom are the wiring instructions. Everything looks perfect. You log into your bank, you carefully type in the account number and routing number, and with a click you send the $65,000. You feel a wave of excitement. The trip is booked. Few days go by. You get a phone call. It's your broker and his tone is off. He's calling to gently remind you that the payment deadline is approaching, and he needs the funds to secure the aircraft. Your heart sinks. You tell him, "What are you talking about? I sent the wire 3 days ago. I sent it to the account you listed in the email." And then he says the words that will echo in your mind for years. "We never sent you an email with wiring instructions. That wasn't our account." In that moment, you realize the $65,000 you saved, the money for your family's dream trip, is gone, vanished, sent to a scammer's account, likely already withdrawn and laundered through a dozen other banks across the globe. You were not the victim of a bad broker or a faulty plane. You were the victim of a ghost in the machine. This is not a rare occurrence. The FBI calls this business email compromise, and it results in billions of dollars in losses every year. And the private aviation industry is a prime target because the payments are large, and the transactions often happen quickly. Here's how they do it. The criminals aren't hacking the bank. They're hacking the email. They gain access to either your email account or the broker's email account, often through a simple phishing link you might have clicked weeks or even months ago. Once inside, they don't do anything. They just wait. They read your emails, learning the rhythm of your communication, understanding the details of your upcoming trip. They are a silent observer, gathering intelligence. They know the aircraft you chose, the price you agreed to, and when you're expecting to pay. Then, at the precise moment they know you're waiting for an invoice, they make their move. They will either send an email from the broker's actual, compromised account, or they'll create a pixel-perfect fake email address, a spoofed domain that looks identical at a quick glance. Maybe they change one letter, swapping an L for a 1, or adding an S to the end of the company name. The email they send you is a masterpiece of deception. It uses the exact same language, the same logos, the same PDF attachments as the real broker. It has all your correct flight information because they've been reading your entire conversation. The only thing they change is the most important part: the bank account and routing number on the invoice. They swap the broker's legitimate corporate account with their own fraudulent one. And because wire transfers are like firing a cannon, fast, powerful, and utterly irreversible, once you send that money, it's gone forever. The banks can't pull it back. The authorities can rarely trace it in time. Now, why is this a critical warning for 2026 and beyond? Because the tools these criminals are using are evolving at an exponential rate. The slightly off grammar or weird formatting that used to be a red flag, that's disappearing. Artificial intelligence can now draft flawless, context-aware emails that are indistinguishable from those written by a human. Scammers can replicate a broker's exact writing style after analyzing just a few of their sent messages. In the near future, they may even be able to use AI-generated deepfake audio to call you, mimicking your broker's voice to verbally confirm the fraudulent account details. The threat is becoming more sophisticated, more convincing, and more dangerous every single day. As more people enter the private charter market for the first time, they become easy targets for criminals who know they're unfamiliar with the standard procedures. So how, then, do you protect yourself from a threat you can't even see? You do it by following a strict, non-negotiable protocol for payment. This is the most important financial advice I can give you for any large transaction, especially a private jet charter. First, and this is the golden rule, Never ever send a wire transfer based on instructions you received in an email. Period. It does not matter how legitimate the email looks. Before you send a single cent, you must get verbal confirmation. This means you pick up the telephone and call your broker using a phone number you have verified independently, like the number on their official website, not a number listed in the email signature of the message you just received. When you have them on the line, you will personally verbally read back the account number and routing number to them, and have them confirm digit by digit that it is correct. If a broker ever pressures you to skip this step, or seems annoyed by your diligence, that is the biggest red flag in the world. Run. A real professional broker will welcome this step, because they are just as terrified of this fraud as you are. Second, become a digital detective. Before you even think about paying, scrutinize the sender's email address. Hover your mouse over the name to reveal the true address behind it. Look for those tiny, almost invisible changes. If the invoice is a PDF, check the document properties for any suspicious author information. Be paranoid. Your paranoia is your shield. Third, ask about payment options. While wire transfers are the standard for the final large balance, ask if you can pay the initial deposit with a credit card. Credit cards come with powerful fraud protection services. If your card is used fraudulently, you can dispute the charge. If you send a fraudulent wire, that money is simply gone. A broker's willingness to accept a credit card for a deposit can be a good sign of their legitimacy. Fourth, protect your own house. Secure your own email account with two-factor authentication. This makes it exponentially harder for a scammer to break into your inbox and monitor your conversations in the first place. It's a simple step that provides a massive layer of security. And finally, when you're vetting a broker, ask them directly about their process for securing financial transactions. Ask them, what is your procedure for preventing wire fraud? A reputable company in 2026 will have a clear, predefined security protocol. They should be the ones insisting on a verbal confirmation call. They should be educating you on the risks. If they don't have a solid answer, they are not the right partner to handle your $50,000, $100,000, or $200,000 transaction. Booking a private jet isn't like booking a ticket on an airline. It is a significant financial and logistical undertaking. It's about more than just picking a plane. It's about understanding that the best deals aren't always found at the last minute, and that empty legs require ultimate flexibility. It's about knowing that the price you're first quoted is rarely the final price you'll pay, and budgeting for the inevitable costs of de-icing, catering, and international fees. It's about looking beyond the leather seats and demanding to see the independent safety audits, the Argus or Wyvern ratings that prove the operator meets the highest standards. And most critically, it's about protecting your capital with an ironclad verification process that stands between your hard-earned money and the sophisticated criminals who want to steal it. By understanding these 5 truths, you are no longer just a passenger. You are an informed, empowered, and secure traveler, ready to navigate the complexities of private aviation not with anxiety, but with confidence. You've learned how to see past the marketing, ask the right questions, and protect yourself from the hidden pitfalls. You are ready to fly smart.